Welcome to the AI Your Business podcast. I'm Kim Fernandez, your host and passionate guide to all things AI for small business owners, coaches, consultants, and service-based entrepreneurs. I'm an AI consultant and launch strategist for online experts, and I love supporting purpose-driven entrepreneurs to elevate their life-first business. When I'm not helping business owners like you design custom AI to wow your clients, improve your operations, marketing or launches, I'm likely out walking by the water, singing in the kitchen, or spoiling a fur baby that I'm minding in my home in beautiful regional New South Wales, Australia. If you're looking to balance AI adoption with a business that's focused on people and connections, whether you're tech savvy or if you're AI curious, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack how to use artificial intelligence in practical, profitable ways, from productivity and marketing to transforming your client results and user experience. We'll dive into real-world examples, expert interviews, and actionable insights to help you level up with AI. We're here to demystify the tech, share proven strategies, real-world stories, and discover practical, creative AI applications for business. So let's dive in. Andrew Forsyth is the founder of Pemberton Productions. He's a video producer, director, and editor with 15 years' experience creating video content for the web, mobile devices, sales engagements, and events. Prior to this, Andrew held senior positions in sales and marketing roles with Microsoft and Canon in Australia, USA, and Singapore. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Kim. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Andrew, you've said that every business has a story to tell. So what's the one story that defines your work and why?
Well, I think it would have to be connection through interesting stories that are told with authenticity.
Nice.
That's pretty much what inspired me to get into the video production business.
Beautiful. And why do you think that defines?
Well, I mean, video is a very, like writing, is a very broad thing. There's many different ways of doing it, many different styles. The style that I was attracted to was the kind of sort of doco style. Grew up watching high quality media on ABC, Australian Story, 7:30 Report, Foreign Correspondent. These are very well produced programs. And I just looked at the production quality of that and thought, 15 years ago, I thought there's no reason why any business, small or large, couldn't have access to that kind of storytelling. And to make the content interesting enough that people would actually want to watch it, whether it's long form or mid form or short form, as we're seeing now with social media, very short form.
Yeah.
The idea that people would actually want to watch the content rather than, be forced to watch something or having to skip through, the old model of advertising. So that's kind of what inspired me. I thought businesses can tell amazing stories now with high production values, but without, breaking the bank.
Yeah, wow. So video as a format, as you mentioned, it's taken the spotlight in content marketing in recent years. So what's your take on video's role in marketing and business today?
Well, I think that it's become the primary medium for consuming information. And it's because YouTube, if you want to know how to do something, you can just have someone show you how to do it. You don't have to read manuals anymore.
Mm-hmm.
For entertainment, movies, bleeding over into music, with Spotify and other online music platforms. It's become the consumption medium, but what also has happened is that it's also being used for production now. And by that, I mean, not when you produce a video, you can use the transcript from that video now to produce content for web copy and social media copy, still images that go with that. And so it's the transcript and being able to use large language models now that really opens up the possibility of video being central to the production side of things. And in fact, I've got a talk that I give called Flipping the Script, where we've moved from the old world where you would start with your product or service, then come up with your website, and you had to come up with all the copy for that. and that could take weeks or months, depending on how many pages you've got. And then you had to come up with all your content for social media. You know, what are the topics? What's the cadence? Headlines, descriptions, thumbnails, thumbnail copy. You have to come up with all of that. And then at the end of all of that, maybe for dessert, you might get a video. But now the whole thing's flipped on its head and compressed. And that's what I mean by flipping the script. Now, videos that we are producing and the transcripts of those can be used to generate the copy for the web pages that those videos are on and for the social media posts. So it's an incredible way to get high quality, consistent messaging that is fast and relatively low cost.
Wow. So what you're saying is, in the flipping the script context, is we're really inversing that pyramid of content, or almost hierarchy of needs for a business marketing suite to launch something, and that that spoken word is really powerful in defining a brand voice. And that is something that I share with my clients a lot too, about developing and what stands out in your brand voice, what makes you unique. That spoken word is really important, and transcripts are really valuable. So it's amazing that you're really making it the center piece of this sort of content and brand creation. So what sort of developments have brought about this change on a broad scale?
Two large things have happened in the last year or two. One is that the quality of cameras in phones now is approaching, the high-end cameras. It's just incredible, the image quality that you can get out of them, and you can connect them to external storage devices and external audio and all that sort of thing now, and everyone has one. So suddenly, people are able to record very high-quality content. Now, whether they can actually use the phone and get beautiful images and tell a story visually is a different thing. I think of it a bit like a musical instrument. You actually have to know how to play if you want to produce great content. But so that's the first thing, is that the phones have come ahead in leaps and bounds, and so have cameras in general. I mean, you can get incredible cameras now for prices that are comparable to phones that have many advantages over the phones. But the other thing is the software that we can use in post-production now that takes advantage of large language models. So we've been experimenting with taking long form content and feeding it into a tool that will cut it down into short form content. And it's quite remarkable, the results. It's far from perfect. It doesn't produce finished product that you could publish, but it does cut down quite a lot of the editing, particularly around putting captions or reformatting from horizontal to vertical, that sort of thing. And the accuracy of the transcripts there is also a big thing that's, just mind-blowing. Claude 3.5 Sonnet and ChatGPT 4.0, those will probably be out of date by the time this podcast's out, but that's the latest crop of large language models. The accuracy is so good. So it means that, because we're always having to have a human check everything that the AI does, when it comes to putting those animated captions on the screen, they seem to get it right just every time. And the timing is just bang on with the spoken word. So so those are two big things, cameras and software. I guess the other thing is that I draw people's attention to is that the spoken word is different from the written word. The way we communicate when we're speaking to a friend or at the pub, with talking to our family or whoever it is, we use shorter sentences, more colloquial. The tone and the delivery is different, and all of that is captured in a video interview, a well done video interview that's like a proper conversation. And if you're plucking out just the gold from a really well done interview and then using that as the basis for your transcript, well, now the meaning is very, very clear, and you can then use large language model to tailor that message for different audiences in different contexts. So incredibly powerful.
Indeed, yes. And when you were talking earlier about these models with captions and formats, you're talking about video editing software?
Yeah, post-production software, video editing software. We've used one called Opus Clip. There's another one called Munch,
Yep.
another one called VDO, which has a funny spelling of that word, BYDEO or something like that. Yeah, that's for chopping long form content down into short form. And one of the interesting applications for that we've been experimenting with over the last few months is just to take a very high quality interview and have the software analyze for what are the best parts of that interview, and it'll actually check online with what topic is trending, which of those clips is most likely to to get attention, or which one is trending on the internet. Now, I think it's early days with all of that stuff, but we're watching with interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can link some of those softwares in the show notes. And I've tried a couple of them, some with greater success than others personally. But I have to say, one of the features I love that you mentioned is that virality score. Like for me, a solopreneur that tends to overthink what I'm doing. I love that somebody else is choosing my clips for me that they think are worthy of reposting or, sharing on social media. So I do love that feature, but yeah, I'm super interested to see where that space goes. Definitely early days, as you said, but it's great that it's really changing your production time and what you can do with your clients as well. So is there a tool or a question you ask, some sort of magic dust that you sprinkle in the air when you're with your clients? It seems to tap into the best stories from your clients.
Storytelling is a craft, and there are various different formulas for what is a good story. And so as a video producer or as an interviewer, if you know what the structure of a good story is, then you'll know what questions to ask to try to pull out the components that you need. Half of it. The other half is just being a good conversationalist. Like, if you can have a conversation where sparks are flying, and there's connection, and the cameras and the lights all just disappear because people are just so into what they're talking about. That's all about listening, about timing. It's about facial expressions. It's about rapport. It's having built the rapport well before the interview. It's about trust, so two people who really trust each other are having a really engaging conversation, then the quality of the content that you can get out of that just is more than, two people barely know each other and someone's trotting out some, rehearsed lines like a politician.
Yeah.
It's harder to get the results. So yeah, building that trust and having an engaging conversation is the key. Yeah.
Beautiful. I kind of thought about when you were sharing that, I thought about also when people have photo shoots, like branding photo shoots, for example, it can be very uncomfortable, but when you've got someone that you have that great rapport and connection with, the outcome is just way far exponentially better result than if you're feeling a little bit stiff and uncomfortable the whole time. So I can imagine your timing and your insight with the questions that you ask would really make a big difference to the end result. How do you balance speed and authenticity in your work? Especially, AI is making everything faster. How do you get to that great quality content at the end?
Well, it's knowing where to go fast and where not to. This is a common trap for people who want to make a video, is they think, well, we'll just do 3 interviews in 30 minutes. We'll do 10 minutes each. Wow. And it's rare that you'll get someone relaxed enough and engrossed and engaged enough to get that goal, that authenticity. So with interviews, take your time. Like, I'll take 40 minutes, an hour block, by the time we've mucked someone up and we've sat down and we're chatting, and you might be 20 minutes into the interview before someone's just like, oh yeah, and let me just tell you about this. Happened with a real estate buyer that I was interviewing the other day. Lovely lady who was doing a very good job in the first 20 minutes of explaining exactly what she did, but it was quite mechanical. It was almost like the written. And then we got to the point where I was like, buying a property is so emotional. People are pulling their hair out, and she's like, oh my God, it so is. And then bang, suddenly she emerged, right, and became this completely authentic version of herself.
Mm.
And it's always a pleasure to see that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And that is, like you said, storytelling is a craft and a skill, and it's obvious that you've got a lot of skills on pulling that out of people for sure.
Well,
So what?
just to add to that. So to answer your question, you know, there are times where you need to slow down and let it take as long as it takes, and take your time, because that's where people can relax. But then there are other parts of it where you can be going like the clappers,
Yeah.
bat out of hell. Yeah. And so that's where the AI comes in, you know, because so here's an example. Even just a couple of years ago, to get a transcript out of my editing software, Adobe Premiere Pro, it would spit out a CSV file, which is a gigantic, ugly table that goes off the side of the screen and has time code all over it. And you couldn't really read it. So I would spend an hour reformatting it just so someone could at least read it. And it would be in an Excel spreadsheet, believe it or not, with text wrap on each cell, like just so they could read it. And now I can just feed that CSV into Claude 3.5 and say, hey, Claude, could you remove the timestamps and just format this neatly into paragraphs for me? Boom, and you watch it just go, copy, paste, Word document, read it through, double check, because it might not be 100% accurate. You just got to make sure you've got every last little thing, and then that's what we then use to generate other content. So yeah, that's where we're going fast.
It's incredible how it really does speed up so many areas of productivity that, you know, you may not initially think of that was really clunky. Like CSV files are about the driest thing you can find. So, you know, the fact that you can just avoid that now is amazing.
Also, just in the editing as well, is where you can be super fast. Like if you know what you're doing, editing is a very time consuming task, especially if you are a beginner or even an intermediate. Since I started editing when I was in my teens, all high action sports stuff, I've done my 10,000 hours, and so I know how to be efficient with editing, what to do, what not to do, what order, what sequence to do things in. You know, you want to avoid costly rework or risk of rework, so knowing where key decision moments are in your editing phase is very important, and that's a way of being able to basically make sure that you can deliver on time, on budget, and hopefully, you know, exceeding expectations. That's always the game. If you can do that, and people look at the rough cut and just go, "Oh my god, yeah, you got it." I kind of live for that. I live for that feeling. The production of it as well, like the actual flow of making it is fun because you're anticipating that, and then when it all comes together and you're proud of the result, it's a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, nice. And how has that impacted accessibility? Like this is the sort of thing that you would imagine a really large organization having the budget for. Has that changed somewhat?
For sure, yeah. Particularly in the last couple of years, suddenly. So I used to think corporate video. I mean, I was doing corporate video for many years. It's 16 years now, and started in tech doing videos for Microsoft and other tech companies, and then finance and insurance, and that led into all sorts of other areas, cybersecurity and so on. And I used to think of corporate video as the poor cousin of TV, you know, of television. When you looked at, I don't know what's documentary on the BBC or ABC or even the US, some of the US channels. But now the corporates are all right up there, and in fact exceeding what people were doing in TV because they're unconstrained. I mean, as a marketing, I was never trained in video production. I never worked in TV. I never went to film school. I'm just completely self-taught, just through a love of life, basically. Being so into such a range of activities that I wanted to film what was happening, particularly high action sports. And so when we started doing video for corporate, the production quality came up, and now suddenly they're kind of on the same level as or better than TV. It's like constrained. They can do whatever they want. They can create new formats. They can think differently about how they're going to use this medium. No longer do the broadcasters have a stranglehold on this medium. Now the same thing is now happening with small business, where they used to be the poor cousin. because they just couldn't afford 10 grand or 15 grand for decent quality video production, even just to do a 3-minute company profile or something like that. But now those costs have come way down. There's the DIY aspect, and it's sad to see, unfortunately, that so many small businesses, and this is not just small business, by the way, it's even medium and large businesses, think that because they have a phone in their pocket now, they can do it all themselves for free, but they just produce such poor quality content that it's just basically dragging down the whole. I mean, 40% of everything you see on the internet, just garbage, unwatchable. Yet for a little extra effort and a little planning and a little skill in knowing how to tell a story, how to plan, how to shoot, how to edit it, suddenly you can have something that's very good quality for a very reasonable cost. And so now with the advent of these high quality cameras and phones, plus some of this AI powered post-production software, now we're looking at new price points that we would never have considered. I mean, I wouldn't have even talked to somebody for $5 grand. I would have laughed at it 10 years ago. But now we're doing things for $1,500 and $3 grand and $5 grand and $8 grand instead of 20 and 30 and 50 and 100. So, I mean, those big jobs are still fun, and we still do those. You need, many cameras and lots of crew, and we're shooting for lots of days, and there's going to be several different versions. Then it's all just a linear, curve of how much equipment, how many people, how many outputs, how long is all that going to take? But for small business now, those price points are within reach.
Makes it super appealing to really want to, up-level that brand story, and everything you've covered really makes it super compelling. So you've worked with both big corporations and small businesses. What do you think they can learn from each other?
Big business can learn from small business about just cutting through the red tape, being entrepreneurial, basically, seeing an opportunity, joining the dots, and going out to market with some new value proposition that solves a problem in some incredible new way. And that's becoming more and more possible now with such an incredible proliferation of new tools and, basically software, the way software is changing the world. On the other side, big business, I think small businesses can learn some rigor, some discipline, teamwork as well. Working at Microsoft, teamwork was, I think, one of the biggest things I learned, particularly over in the US. I found the Americans do it incredibly well. Australians also incredibly good at teamwork. But I think the Americans just took it, well, in my experience anyway, they just took it to another level, and I just lapped it up. And, we implement those lessons in working with our crews today.
That's nice. Yeah, I'd have to say I've worked in both corporate and like ASX 200 style organizations, right through to, solopreneurs and freelancers. And I'd have to say my experience, that leadership element that you get in the larger, business space is something that as a small business or a solopreneur who then grows rapidly and then ends up with a team, you have a vision and you're a founder, but you don't necessarily have natural, team management, leadership skills to be able to create that cohesion. And I really appreciate the time that I spent in large organizations to help me sort of hone that. A bit of rigor always helps.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah, the leadership factor. Although, in some small businesses, you will have someone who's good at their craft or their art or, whatever it is that they're doing, they're working in the business, but they'll also be a natural leader and inspiring. So those people who can build from a small business to a medium-sized business or a large business, you've got to have a lot of respect for them. But I agree with you also, some businesses where people are just really good at what they do, but they don't really know much about teamwork or just management, basically management, just being organized. Like, it surprises me how utterly disorganized some businesses that I work with, how disorganized they are. I mean, just next level. It's just hard to understand how they function. And we have to maneuver around that. But if you get a win-win in the final result and everyone's high-fiving, then it's all worth it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I know I always like to believe the best in those situations and think, well, if there's a little bit of a lack of structure, it's quite often because they've grown so fast and they now need to build the scaffolding underneath for the next level. I like to think that's the reason.
Sure.
So just a quick question about the small business owner listening or watching this interview. What do you think that first simple step is that they can do to take their storytelling to the next level? How should they think about AI in that journey?
Okay, we'll take those two separately. So the storytelling side of it, we all know a good story when we hear it. You know, it's the first thing we do when you catch up with an old friend. Oh, and it's usually the very first thing people talk about is what went wrong, conflict, some inciting incident, you know, and you're thwarted from achieving whatever it is that you're after. Now there are various different storytelling gurus. Robert McKee is a favorite of mine. He's Hollywood's mentor. He has amongst his students, I think, more than 50 Academy Award nominees. He was featured on South Park as a character. So, you know, he's a very well-known guy. I think in his mid or late 80s now. He wrote the book Story 25 years ago, where he basically reverse engineered all the top Hollywood films and explained the pattern. It was like reverse engineering and putting out the code. Here's the code for how stories work. And then about 5 years ago, he published Storynomics, where he adapted that storytelling for businesses. And there are lots of big corporates, you know, Coca-Cola, Procter and Gamble, Microsoft, and many others, where the marketing people in those companies really need to know this stuff. So I'm a huge fan of his, and it's not a secret. I mean, anyone can look it up and hear what his principles are for storytelling. And then you look for those stories. So, you know, if you talk to some of your customers about situations that they've faced, difficulties that they've faced, great struggle, they've overcome something, you know, phoenix rising from the ashes type stuff. You know, how did that happen? So if you know what a good story structure is, and if you know what questions to ask, you can find those stories. And in fact, that's what I help a lot of my clients do, because they don't necessarily know this stuff. So I get on the phone to their clients and go, hey, so who's the craziest, most interesting person in your whole company? And they go, oh, that would be Jennifer. Let me tell you about Jennifer, right? Or something like that. You go, oh, tell me about Jennifer. What's the story? Oh my God, here we go. This, you know, and then this human story will just come tumbling out. And then you're looking for the connection between that story, whatever it is, and the product that is being, you know, as part of that. So you're weaving together a beautiful human story with your product or service. So that's to me is how you make compelling content. So the next thing I would say is, and I agree strongly with a business coach that I've been working with, Lana Ratapu, on this point about figuring out, you know, which problem in your business are you going to address first? For a small business, you know, not being afraid of AI or overwhelmed by the scale of it and the just so much of it, you know, and it's quite hard to get your head around, but just look at one specific problem and how can you use AI to solve that particular problem? In our case, because, you know, video production is our business, we're looking at using the transcript to generate web copy and social media copy. It's just one discrete little thing that you can do that can speed you up and save you a whole lot of time having to write in long, complicated, you know, wooden sentences that sound like a product brochure. Instead of doing that, just let it come flowing out of you in an interview. Take that transcript and then have it write the copy for your web page. Of course, you supervise that. You make sure that you're happy with it and you tweak it, but oh, wow, it saves you a lot of time. So yeah, just one business problem and have a go at it. And once you sort of start to get the hang of one tool, you can move on to another tool and another tool. And it's exciting. You know, I think some people might be scared of it, but I've heard it said, and I have to agree, that if anyone's going to lose their job, they'll lose it to someone who knows how to use these tools. So I think we all need to learn how to use them and to be discerning as well, and to know where the claims are overblown, or to know where it's more trouble than it's worth, or to know if the results are not good. If it's coming across as fake or repetitive, or I look at the image generators, and they can generate all these beautiful images and video. It's coming, but is it as good as what we can shoot with you and your client at their location and see what actually happened? So it's about sort of being able to come to a evaluation of whether the output of an AI tool is really all that good or not. In the case of transcripts, it's incredible. So we're on to that.
Yeah, great. I love what you mentioned with your business coach. And there was something I learned recently that was a really nice 2x2 grid that helps businesses understand where to start with AI. And it's just simply, on one axis, it's impact, and the other one is complexity. So the highest point is like high impact, but simplicity. Start there. And have a look at all the wish list, and don't start with the super complicated stuff, but have a look at something that could be simple, like transcription, that has a high impact on your work output, and sort of list those things and start there. And I have to say, I agree with you in terms of what's happening with people's jobs and the workforce, in that it is these repetitive tasks that will be taken away, and people will be able to then lift to a higher level in their role. Now, I do think that there's going to be an element where there are so many repetitive tasks taken away that there's an area of the workforce that essentially needs reskilling, and there's a bit of a gap there. So, if you don't have a degree, or if you don't have certain skills, it's going to be a certain demographic that's been fulfilling these roles that we're going to make sure somehow that we address the challenge with people who have been doing repetitive tasks, reskilling, upskilling. So I think you're right, and part of the purpose of this podcast is to just help people dispel the myths, not be so afraid, find some really practical ways to get involved, because this is not going away anytime soon. It's like the next evolution of the workforce and the way that we do things in the future.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I liked in your episode 0 of this podcast that you talked about the importance of letting AI amplify your strengths. I think that's incredibly important. And when that comes to people who might have been in some repetitive task or job where, a lot of it could be automated, I think that looking for strengths where it's about human relationships and trust and connection and listening and problem solving and being able to learn quickly and adapt to all these new tools as they're coming. Like, we're in a world now of continuous learning. If you're not constantly upskilling, like every week, every month, it's going to be hard to compete with people who are. And so it's all there, though. This is the incredible thing. All you have to do is just flick open YouTube and go, hey, how does this work? Or how can I do this faster? Or how can I do that better? And bang, someone will tell you. Or you try it, and then, oh, wow, suddenly you're doing it. So it is a kind of rat race. You kind of have to keep up, I think. But I think that the AI tools are only ever tools. Despite what people talk about with AGI coming and, synthetic boyfriends and girlfriends, and you won't have to bother speaking to any other humans anymore, and you can hide behind your keyboard and your texts. But what an impoverished life that would be for humanity. I mean, Scott Galloway is a US podcaster who talks quite a bit, particularly about men and in the increasing isolation that they're facing in the US, young men. Isolation, and less likely to get into romantic relationships, less likely to have economic success, are more likely to get into addictions and all sorts of negative externalities of the fact that people are just kind of getting addicted to games and tech and not having so much personal human connection. So I think that if AI can help humans play to that strength of creating connection, and it is possible. I mean, I met my wife on Tinder. We've been together 8 years now, and we never would have met except for that one fateful swipe right. And
There's a
I'm so glad
story.
we did. Yeah, yeah. So look, I mean, there have to be ways for the software to be in service of humanity's, what is it, Steven Pinker's better angels, the best parts of humanity. So that's what I'm optimistic about.
Yeah. And I think also the awareness and the curiosity rather than fear, like having excitement and curiosity and leaning into these tools really helps. And having that attitude of awareness of how to keep your data private and safe and how to use these tools so that you're controlling the environment. I think if you find that place to play, I think that's really an important place to start. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, no, I think cybersecurity incredibly important, and particularly protecting kids from online harms. One of my very first clients, when I very first started Pemberton Productions, just after having left Microsoft, was Julie Inman Grant, who was there, a colleague of mine at Microsoft, and she is now Australia's e-safety commissioner. I think she's been in that role for some years, 5-6 years or something like that, and playing a globally leading role in helping with guiding regulation, about how social media platforms could or should or shouldn't be used with kids. I think that's very important. There's the Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt's book, US public intellectual who's written about the harms of social media. And they're suggesting, no phones in schools, before the age of 16. And even stricter possible restrictions to prevent some of the harms. So I think you're very right about that. There's a lot of dangers. I mean, incredible dangers. As soon as we've got AI agents that can make decisions with automations, then you couple that with the military-industrial complex. Well, now suddenly you've got think tanks around the world talking about disaster scenarios and the extinction of humankind. So it's very important, very high stakes stuff. And the idea that it's all just going to magically unfold for the good is by no means predetermined.
Yeah.
So it takes responsible leadership, I think, for governments and corporations to make the right guardrails on how this technology is used. And that's one reason I'm a fan of Claude 3.5 Sonnet and the management there at Anthropic. They're taking quite a responsible approach to AI, putting controls in around what it can and can't do. So, and that's the one that we're using with our video productions. So.
Yeah, very good. It's taken a very heavy turn, and I'm trying to remember this book that I really want to reference. I'm going to reference it in the show notes because I do want to talk about this. You've touched this topic. So in this particular book, it's an Oxford professor who's written this publication about the different ways that humans could become extinct and the risks to those. And there's about 6 of them. And one of them is AI. And most of the risks are like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,000,000. Like it's a huge chance of, very high odds. But AI is something like 1 in 6 because of the generative
I've heard that
AI.
stat as well, 5% or something like that, or some obscenely high percentage chance that it could happen.
Which is where the legislation and the safety and all of those areas are really paramount for us to grapple with. And while we won't solve it right now, I do think that we do need external parties in that realm because, in the past, tech has been something that is done to us almost. It's very expensive to run and to build, and it's something that is sort of rolled out, and you get your software update whether you like it or not on your iPhone or your laptop or what have you. And now there's an opportunity for software and technology to be created by us collectively, humanity. So there's a great opportunity there, but I certainly don't think the tech companies are going to gear themselves into a place where they feel that they are happy to be governing what happens next in that world of act fast and break things. There's got to be something in the middle that's going to help with the interplay.
Well, look, I know there's always multiple points of view on whether corporations or governments are doing enough. I certainly, because Microsoft, and I worked over in the US headquarters. And in fact, I had quite a lot to do with the legal department there, because I was involved in anti-piracy in the US subsidiary. And the work that I was involved with fed up into Brad Smith's organization, and he's the chairman now today. And if you listen to him talking about this topic, you know, I think for some years now, I think it's going back 4 or 5 years, at least Microsoft has some principles by which they claim that they are developing AI software. You know, if you listen to Brad Smith on this topic, it's heartening to hear that it's a kind of responsible for the greater good, avoiding the harms, looking realistically at the potential harms. The problem is, though, that even if, I mean, Microsoft may or may not do the right thing for one thing, but also now you've got open source models. Facebook has published Llama, you know, and the Chinese now have got that code and built their own, and with an entirely different value system and an entirely different idea of what the future of humanity looks like. And so it is a worry. It is definitely a worry. If you listen to some of these experts about where all this might lead, artificial general intelligence, say an algorithm that has all of the smarts of a Nobel Prize winner in every single field, and that can make decisions on its own and can form its own goals and can train other AIs, that sort of thing. It does start to get scary. I think we're a long way away from all that sort of thing. Although, who's the other guy? Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google. I just listened to him yesterday on a podcast. He was saying it's going to happen pretty quickly. You know, they're talking 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he's also, you know, arguing for strong regulation. And,
yes, and I would have to say that that's part of the reason why I really want people to become aware, become comfortable, and start using these tools, because there's an element of advocacy that needs to happen. I mean, we haven't even touched on, and maybe we've covered a lot of big topics, but there's also the bias in you know, different models as well, and how they've been fed and what they've been fed in the information, and examples of, you know, algorithms refusing people credit because of a certain, you know, demographic, or, you know, things like that happening that are just, oh, it's just an AI algorithm it's determining these things for people. So there's a lot of stuff around that we're still unpacking and unraveling. But with AI, there is machine learning, there's deep learning, and there's generative AI. And the sorts of tools that I think businesses are going to be able to really benefit from, just at a grassroots level, are the areas of machine learning and deep learning, which is where, when you use these large language models that have got AI tools plugged into it, like you and I have used in different ways, that can be something that's really powerful, and it's available today. And I certainly would encourage anybody, rather than step back and think, oh, this could be a bit scary, I really would encourage you instead to lean in and make a few first steps, and also set up the parameters, as I said, to make it safe. It's something that you can control, and it's something that you can set up to use safely for your business and still protect your brand.
Absolutely right. There are many use cases where it's quite narrow, the way, you know, what data you're going to use. There are ways of making it secure, so that if you wanted to have you know, a chatbot on your website, but you don't want to upload all your private company information onto the internet, there are ways you can make that private and still get that functionality with a chatbot on your website that knows all about your company, but it's accessing your private data and you have control over that. So, and in our case with video production, it's a very narrow use case. I mean, it's just a transcript from a video, and we're just saying, hey, take this transcript and, you know, transform it into this format for this website, or give me YouTube headlines, you know. So you can get your hands around something, and you can see how quickly you can get stuff done, and the quality and consistency, fast and for low cost. If you see that across one kind of small, narrow application that's going to save you a bunch of time and money, then why not? You know, and we'll cross the bridge later about whether AGI is going to come and eat us all.
Andrew, what's next for you? What's lighting you up about where you're headed?
Well, so I'm excited about working with small business, which is the first time, in my career to offer video production services to small business, because now, you can have pretty high quality for reasonable cost. But also on the corporate side, what I'm excited about is helping business leaders to engage their audiences in new and interesting ways. I'll give you an example. One of my coaches from back in my Microsoft days, a chap by the name of Chris Morsley, is an executive communications coach and helps CEOs of major tech companies all around the world. And like a million other consultants and consultants, I guess you'd say, or any business for that matter. If you look at the social media feeds, LinkedIn and so on, it's all just business. Lesson. Do it this way, don't do it that way. It's just putting your advice or whatever out into the world. And when you look at your feed, it's just, okay, you might have 1,000 contacts or 2,000 contacts or whatever, but one item to the next, they're just not contiguous in any kind of way. It's just like leafing through new idea. It's not quite that bad, but you know what I mean. It's just this disparate. So I think that targeting your audience on social media with a balance of business content, but also content that reveals something about you, the character. And this is what we've done with Chris Morsley. So he's putting out a lot of content that helps CEOs of companies to connect with their staff, how to be authentic, how leadership, about emotional intelligence and regulation, about motor mimicry, about dealing with small groups and large groups. And he's doing all that, and that's all good. And we're helping him with that using the AI tools I was talking about before. Interview, chop it up into small ones, transcripts, social media posts, web pages, all of that. But in addition, this is what I'm excited about, is we've been telling a story about finding out something that nobody really knew about Chris. I certainly didn't know, was that he's, at the age of 59, a downhill skateboarder. And is doing 80 kilometers an hour down the hills around Sydney and all over the world for that matter. It takes his skateboard with him to Malaysia and Thailand and all sorts of places. And it's full on. And as a fellow extreme sports enthusiast, I've been into a few different sports, skydiving and scuba diving and windsurfing, various different things. I challenged him to learn a new sport called wingfoiling, which is these hydrofoil surfboards that float above the water with a sail, just a handheld inflatable sail. Okay. And it is so much fun. I literally, after this interview, am going to be going straight down to the beach because there's a nor'easter blowing right now, and I'm going to be flying. The speeds are incredible. It's so much fun. But it takes a little while to learn. Typically, you might have to go 10 times over a summer. So I challenged Chris Morsley to learning it in 2 days. Ooh. How could I say that? Because he knows how to ride a skateboard. So I thought, okay, we'll teach him the sail on the skateboard, and then we'll get him on an e-foil, which is the electronic version with a little gun, and sort of step him up into the world of hydrofoil flight. And then we'll get him onto a wingfoil. And we filmed it all and made a little mini series out of it. And so we're publishing these little 5-minute segments of the story every week, which we've been doing over the last couple of months with Chris's journey. Now, who's tuning in to watch this? CEOs around the world. They're learning about Chris in a way that you never would have got from him if you just listened to his business content, because now you're seeing the guy under duress. You're seeing him not, I don't want to say at his worst, but he is struggling, in certain scenarios, but the guy is just unstoppable, and you can see that he is going to succeed. He's just got that mentality, one of those type of people. So he hasn't quite got there yet, but he's very close, and so looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, great.
So that's a long answer to your question about what I'm excited about, is helping produce content that people actually want to watch, and revealing something about characters that are involved, or telling amazing stories, helping businesses get their message across to their audiences.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds great. What a great space to be in. Andrew, this has been such an insightful conversation. We've gone all manner of places, and I've loved how you show us the power of storytelling and also mobile tech and AI and how that's all come together in your world. For listeners who want to learn more about who you are and what you do and how you can help them with their video and storytelling, where's the best place to find you?
Well, LinkedIn probably as a first port of call. Chat there and so on. But my website, of course, pembertonproductions.com.au, and I've got a little news and insights section where I publish all the latest stuff, whether it's blog articles or some podcasts. I've been doing some podcasts with my cameraman Dom Flanagan lately. We've been talking about all sorts of things about how to get more out of video production, for example. So there's quite a lot of content there that people can, if they want to learn more. And I'm also always happy to jump on a 15-minute call with somebody on LinkedIn Video or Teams or Google Meet, whatever platform people prefer.
Nice. Well, thanks again for joining us on the AI Your Business podcast, Andrew. It's been fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Kim. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing.
Thanks for tuning in to the AI Your Business podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback means the world and helps other business owners discover the power of AI. If you have real-world experiences to share about your results with AI, I'd love to hear from you. Head over to the guest application form on the website. While you're there, check out the show notes, extra resources, and more ways to connect. Let's keep it simple, stay curious, and make AI work for you. Until next time.